Hey there, it's Walt. I was aghast. It was one of the most disturbing and disruptive things I had ever heard. I'd been out in the mountains for about 10 days, climbing and hiking, and I was coming down the trail back out to civilization, and I was walking with my friend Bob, and somehow the conversation turned to our families, the families we grew up in, our families of origin. And we began talking about how we went to school, where we went to school, elementary school, junior high school, high school. And then he said that his family, his mom and dad, would ask him about the things that he had failed on and celebrated. I was shocked. It was as if he had said that he had been raised by aliens, or that the world was flat, or that the moon was made of green cheese. I couldn't believe it. Because in my family, the grade B, the letter B, meant bad. It meant that you weren't measuring up. A's were expected. A+ were expected. And failure was definitely not celebrated. I can remember coming home with a paper that was a 90 out of 100. And my mother would say, "That's good, dear, but you know, a solid A would be better." And I'd come home with a 95, and she'd say, that's good, but you know, an A+ would be better. I could come home with a paper that had 100 on it, and she'd say, were there bonus points that you missed? I, to this day, a little bit ashamed that my college cumulative average was 3.94, and I still harbor ill will against that teacher who gave me the B+ in my junior year. But all kidding aside, friends, the idea that failure was something to be celebrated was just beyond my wildest imagination. And of course, going into a professional career like law, the idea of making a mistake wasn't a very good thing, because if you made a mistake, you could be sued or disciplined. And so many of us, I know I'm not alone on this, many of us were brought up with the idea that we needed to avoid failure at all cost. And what I have discovered is that Bob was right. That failure actually is a good thing. It's a particularly good thing in the marketing world, in the digital marketing world. It's particularly good in terms of getting the messaging right with your audience, because like the stock market, the only true arbiter as to whether something is working or not is the marketplace itself, with your audience, with the people that you serve, whether you see that it's resonating or not. And so we need to be constantly iterating and experimenting and testing the edges and seeing what doesn't work, which means we need to be failing a lot. We need to be seeing what doesn't work so that we can see what does. And so what I have worked on over a very long time is beginning to see the work as a creative experiment. Let's see if this works. Let's see how this turns out. Test the edges. Look at the metrics. Study what the audience says. I was doing a keynote long ago, a keynote I do all of the time, and it was a very warm and engaged audience, and I began to riff in a slightly different way that I usually present that section, and I looked out at the audience. They're all going, and they were like really excited about it. I thought, oh, that's different. That works. And so looking at how we show up in the world as business professionals, as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as speakers, as consultants, and seeing the work as iterative, as creative, and not being afraid of failure, but seeing it as a really important part of how we show up in the world so that we can get better and better and better and serve at an ever deeper level. So it's a process I'm working on. I encourage you to look at failure as something to be celebrated. Make it a great rest of the day, great rest of the week. Bye for now.